The Cyrix warships hung in the sky like a dark cloud, their massive, cold forms blotting out the sun over Earth's last remaining stronghold. The battle for Earth's survival had raged for months, but now it was clear. Humanity was losing. The Cyrix, with their superior technology and ruthless efficiency, had crushed every colony and every defense system in their path. Earth was all that remained. In the heart of Earth's capital, the council chambers were a place of fractured authority. The leaders of Earth's military, political, and scientific communities were gathered around a table, faces drawn with exhaustion and despair. The once proud walls of the council hall now stood battered, their pristine architecture marred by the constant tremor of distant explosions. General Maeve Stark, Earth's highest-ranking officer, slammed her fist on the table, the room quieting instantly. "We can't hold out any longer. Our last line of defense is falling. The Cyrix are everywhere." Her voice, usually strong and resolute, was edged with the weariness of a leader who had seen too much destruction. Dr. Lydia Ray, Earth's chief scientist, leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "There is one chance left, but it's a long shot. We need her." "Who?" General Stark asked, her brow furrowed. "Commander Alyssa Kane," Lydia replied, her tone serious. "She's the last known descendant of Earth's original defenders, the Guardians. We believe she has the power to activate the ancient relics hidden beneath the ruins of our past. If anyone can stop the Cyrix, it's her." The mention of Alyssa's name seemed to stir something in the room. Alyssa Kane had been a legend, a hero in Earth's darkest days, until she disappeared. Rumors swirled that she had retired, her spirit broken after the last battle where Earth's greatest defenders were wiped out by a Cyrix assault. But if what Lydia said was true, then Alyssa was humanity's last hope. Stark's gaze hardened. "We'll need to find her, and we'll need to convince her to come back. But even with the Guardian's power, we don't know if it'll be enough." "We don't have a choice," Lydia countered. "It's the only chance we've got. If we don't act now, Earth is finished." A tense silence fell over the room as the weight of the situation settled in. Earth had fought hard, but now, it seemed the planet was destined to fall under Cyrix rule. General Stark nodded reluctantly. "Then we move out immediately. Assemble a team." Alyssa Kane wasn't easy to find. She had vanished without a trace after the fall of Earth's defenses, retreating from a world that had lost its fight. But those who knew her well remembered one thing. Alyssa was never one to surrender. Even in her darkest hour, she had always stood tall. On the outskirts of the capital, in a crumbling military outpost, a small team of soldiers prepared for their mission. Among them was Captain Marcus Hayes, an old friend of Alyssa's from the days when humanity had still fought together against the Cyrix. His eyes were filled with a quiet determination, but even he could feel the dread that hung in the air. "Alyssa's out there somewhere," he said, more to himself than anyone else, "and we're going to find her." As the team gathered their gear and prepared for their journey, the sound of distant explosions rumbled in the background, a reminder of the urgency of their task. Earth's defenders had been scattered, their ranks broken by years of endless conflict. But if they could find Alyssa, if they could awaken the power of the Guardians, perhaps, just perhaps, the tide could still be turned. The journey ahead was uncertain, and the challenges they would face were unimaginable. But for the first time in months, there was a spark of hope. And that, against all odds, was enough to push them forward. Alyssa Kane, Earth's final defender, was about to reappear. The team made their way through the desolate outskirts of Earth's capital, the once bustling city now reduced to a shadow of its former self. Buildings lay in ruins, remnants of humanity's final stand scattered across the horizon. The air was thick with the acrid scent of burning debris, and the heavy hum of distant alien warships patrolling the skies. It was a city on its last legs, and the weight of this grim reality hung over them. Captain Marcus Hayes led the group, his hand gripping the hilt of his plasma rifle with a fierce determination. His thoughts were preoccupied, wondering how much Alyssa had changed in the years since she disappeared. Would she be the same person he once knew? Or had the years of war and loss consumed her entirely? He pushed those thoughts aside. There was no time for doubt. Earth's survival depended on this mission. The team moved swiftly, blending into the ruins, avoiding Cyrix patrols. Among them was Dr. Lydia Ray, the brilliant scientist who had spent years uncovering the secrets of Earth's ancient technology. She was the one who believed in the legends of the Guardians, who was convinced that Alyssa held the key to humanity's salvation. But Lydia's optimism was tempered by fear. Fear that they might not find Alyssa, or worse, that they would find a broken woman who had given up hope. "Keep your eyes open," Marcus whispered, his voice low and tense. The Cyrix might be gone from this part of the city, but they could be anywhere. Just as they rounded a corner, the faint sound of a distant explosion shook the ground beneath their feet. They froze, their weapons raised in an instant, but the noise came from farther off. A small group of Cyrix invaders, perhaps unaware of their presence, were focused on looting a nearby supply depot. "That's our opening," Marcus said quietly. "We move fast." They sprinted toward the entrance of the underground tunnels that led to the forgotten ruins. The path was treacherous, the tunnels labyrinthine, and filled with dangerous obstacles, relics of a past humanity had abandoned in the face of the Cyrix threat. As they descended deeper into the Earth's underbelly, an eerie silence enveloped them. The air grew colder, and the walls seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. The deeper they went, the closer they came to their goal, an ancient facility hidden from the Cyrix for centuries. The relics that could awaken the Guardian's power were said to be housed here, but nothing worth saving came without a price. Dr. Ray's voice echoed softly in the darkness. "These ruins were once the heart of our civilization, back when humanity was unified. Now, they're just forgotten tombs." "There's a reason they were forgotten," Marcus muttered, glancing over his shoulder at the others. "Some things are better left undisturbed." As they pressed forward, the temperature dropped even further, and the eerie hum of long-dormant technology vibrated through the walls. At the heart of the facility, they found what they were searching for, a massive stone door covered in ancient inscriptions. Lydia immediately began translating the symbols, her fingers trembling with excitement. "This is it. The core of the Guardian's power is just beyond this door." But as they approached, a sudden noise shattered the quiet. From the shadows, a group of Cyrix soldiers appeared, hiding within the ruins, watching them with cold, calculating eyes. They had been tracking them all along. A firefight erupted in the cramped tunnel. The team fought desperately, their weapons blazing as they tried to hold off the advancing Cyrix. Alyssa's power, whatever it was, had to be within reach. But the longer they fought, the more the odds seemed to turn against them. Marcus's mind raced. This was no ordinary group of Cyrix. There was something different about them. They moved with unnatural precision, as though they were not just soldiers but something more. "Lydia, get that door open," Marcus shouted, trying to buy her time. His heart pounded in his chest as he fired, taking down one Cyrix soldier after another. But they kept coming, relentless, like a swarm of insects closing in on their prey. Lydia worked quickly, sweat beading on her forehead as she activated the ancient mechanism. "I'm trying. Just hold them off." The air around them crackled with energy, the stone door beginning to shift and groan as it slowly opened, revealing a vast chamber filled with glowing ancient artifacts, devices that pulsed with an unsettling power. As the door opened wider, a blinding light poured out, and for a moment, it felt as though time itself stood still. But there was no time to savor the discovery. The Cyrix were almost upon them. Marcus's rifle clicked empty, and he cursed under his breath, drawing his sidearm. And then, from the shadows, a figure emerged. The silhouette was unmistakable. Alyssa Kane. She stood at the entrance to the chamber, her eyes glowing with an intensity that matched the energy around them. Her armor, once thought to be a mere legend, gleamed with the same energy that now filled the room. She had returned. Alyssa's voice was calm, but deadly. "Get back. I'll handle this." Before Marcus could say anything, Alyssa raised her hand. The air itself seemed to hum in response, and in an instant, the remaining Cyrex soldiers were thrown back by an invisible force. They crashed into the walls with bone-shattering force, their bodies crumpling in a heap. Alyssa stepped forward, her presence commanding, her energy crackling like a storm. "This is where it ends," she said, her voice low, steady, and resolute. "For Earth, for humanity." The battle had just begun, but Alyssa was back, and the Guardian was awake. The chamber was still, the air thick with a palpable tension. The glowing relics pulsated in eerie harmony, casting long shadows across the walls. The Cyrex soldiers lay scattered, their bodies crumpled under the invisible force Alyssa had unleashed. But as the silence lingered, it felt as if something deeper was at play. An unspoken presence that neither Marcus nor the others could identify. Alyssa stood motionless, her gaze fixed on the artifacts in the center of the room, as if communing with them. The energy surrounding her was undeniable. Lydia stepped forward, her voice a mixture of awe and concern. "Alyssa, we found it. The power, it's here. We need to." "I know," Alyssa interrupted, her voice distant, as though she hadn't fully returned from the place she had just been. "But it's not just the Cyrex we need to worry about." Marcus's hand tightened on his weapon, his instincts alert. "What are you talking about? We've got no time to." "There's something else," Alyssa continued, her voice colder now, more forceful. She turned to face the team, her eyes now glowing faintly with an unnatural light. "Something that's been hiding in the shadows all this time. It's been watching us. And it's not Cyrex." The word sent a ripple of unease through the group. They had barely managed to hold their ground against the Cyrex, and now there was another enemy lurking in the unknown. Marcus's pulse quickened as he scanned the dark corners of the room, but the shadows revealed nothing. Lydia, ever the scientist, was already searching through the relics. "What do you mean? Are you saying the Cyrex aren't our only threat? But we've been fighting them for years. What could possibly be worse?" Alyssa's gaze darkened, her features hardening with a new resolve. "The Cyrex are just pawns. They're being controlled by something older, something far more dangerous. The power in this room," she gestured to the relics surrounding them, "is ancient, too ancient. I thought I could control it, but now, I'm not so sure." Before anyone could respond, the chamber seemed to tremble, a low rumble reverberating through the walls. The glow of the relics brightened, flickering erratically. Something was coming. "We need to get out of here," Marcus said, his voice strained. "If this place is a trap." "No," Alyssa said firmly. "We have to stay. The answer is here, but we're not the only ones looking for it." As if on cue, the shadows seemed to coalesce, twisting unnaturally. A figure emerged from the dark, its form fluid, shifting like smoke, yet somehow solid. The figure's face was obscured by a dark, featureless mask, but its presence radiated power, dark and malevolent. The team instinctively raised their weapons, but Alyssa held up a hand, stopping them. "Don't fire. It won't do any good." "Who are you?" Marcus demanded, his voice sharp with authority. The figure tilted its head, an almost imperceptible smile forming on its lips. "I am the one who has been waiting," it said, its voice a low, rumbling whisper that seemed to come from all directions at once. "The Guardian's power was never meant for you, but I am not here to stop you. I am here to help you, or rather, to help you realize the truth." Lydia's eyes narrowed. "Help us, or deceive us?" The figure chuckled softly, the sound like distant thunder. "You will understand in time. You are not the first to seek the power of the Guardian, but you will be the last." Before they could react, the figure vanished into the shadows, leaving the air heavy with the sense of something vast and unknowable. "What just happened?" Marcus asked, his grip tightening on his weapon as he searched for any sign of movement. Alyssa remained silent for a moment, her brow furrowed in deep thought. That wasn't a Cyrex. It's something else. Something far older. I've felt its presence before, in the deepest corners of my mind. It's been guiding them. And now it's guiding me. But why? Lydia pressed, her voice trembling. What does it want? Alyssa turned toward the team, her eyes hard with a mixture of determination and fear. It wants control. It wants me to embrace the power of the Guardian fully and become its vessel. If I do, I'll destroy everything, just like it wants. Marcus shook his head, struggling to grasp the full magnitude of Alyssa's words. That's insane. We've seen what you're capable of, Alyssa. We can win. We can fight back. But Alyssa was already shaking her head. This isn't just a battle for survival anymore. This is a war for my soul. And if I fall to it, Earth won't stand a chance. The air grew tense with the weight of her words. The team had fought so long, so hard to hold the line. But now, the stakes had risen far beyond anything they could have imagined. It wasn't just the Cyrex they had to defeat. It was an ancient, insidious force, one that had waited millennia to rise again. As the room fell into an uneasy silence, the glow from the relics seemed to pulse with a dark rhythm, as if something was awakening within them. The unknown enemy was close. And this time, the fight would be against something far more dangerous than any alien invader. Alyssa's voice broke the silence. We have no choice but to face it, together. And with that, they prepared to face the unknown, whatever it was, knowing that the true battle for Earth's survival had only just begun. The tension in the chamber was almost suffocating. The strange, shifting figure had vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving behind only questions and a chilling sense of impending doom. Alyssa, her expression set in a grim determination, stood before the glowing relics, her hands trembling slightly as if she were trying to suppress a force she couldn't fully control. The echoes of the figure's voice still rang in the air, like a whisper lingering in the back of their minds. Marcus stepped forward, his voice steady but laced with unease. Alyssa, what the hell just happened? Who was that thing? And what does it want with you? Alyssa's gaze hardened, and she shook her head slowly. I don't know who or what it is, but I've felt its presence for a long time. It's not just a part of the Cyrex. It's something older, something that's been hidden for centuries. I thought I could control the power of the Guardians, but now I'm not so sure. Lydia, who had been standing silently by, her mind racing, stepped closer. If it's controlling the Cyrex, then what is its purpose? Why is it manipulating you? Alyssa's lips curled into a faint, bitter smile. I don't think it's controlling me. I think it's been trying to make me its weapon. It wants me to embrace the power of the Guardians completely, to become its vessel. But if I do, I'll destroy everything. Her voice faltered for the first time, a hint of fear slipping through her composed exterior. Including Earth. Marcus's mind raced. The stakes had always been high, but now they were higher than ever before. The Cyrex, once thought to be the ultimate enemy, were just pawns in a much larger game. And now, Alyssa, their last hope, was at the center of it all, caught between the power she could wield and the darkness that threatened to consume her. We can't let that happen, Marcus said, his voice firm. We'll fight this thing, whatever it is, and we'll do it together. You're not alone in this. Alyssa met his gaze, her expression unreadable. I don't know if that's enough, Marcus. This thing, it's not just a creature. It's something ancient, primal. I don't even understand how it works, but I do know one thing. It's tied to the Guardian's power. And if I don't stop it... Lydia's voice cut through the silence, her words sharp with urgency. Then we stop it together. We can't give up now, not after everything we've sacrificed. Alyssa looked at her team, the weight of her burden clear in her eyes. She had always been their leader, their strength, but now she was uncertain, torn between the power that could save Earth and the force that could destroy it. The relics surrounding them seemed to hum with a dark promise. the air thick with energy. "Then let's get to work," Alyssa said, her voice steady once more. "We need to activate the core of this facility. The relics here might hold the key to unlocking the full power of the Guardians, and I need to be ready to face whatever is coming." Marcus nodded. "We'll help you, but we need to move fast. I don't think we have much time before that thing comes back." With a shared look of resolve, the team began to work. Lydia focused on the ancient consoles embedded in the walls, deciphering the symbols and activating the mechanisms that would trigger the facility's main power grid. Alyssa, her fingers hovering over the relics, seemed to be in deep concentration, her mind stretching out to touch the dormant power buried within the very bones of the earth. As the energy in the room surged, the relics began to glow brighter, their ancient light filling the chamber with an almost unbearable intensity. The floor vibrated beneath their feet, and the air grew thick with a growing hum, an energy that seemed to pulse in time with Alyssa's heartbeat. For a moment, everything went still, and then the ground trembled. The walls cracked, and a deep, resonating voice filled the chamber, louder than ever before. "You cannot control me, Alyssa Kane. You are nothing but a vessel for my power. You will bow, or you will break." The temperature in the room dropped sharply, and the shadows along the walls seemed to grow deeper, more menacing. A cold wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing all light save for the eerie glow of the relics. Alyssa's face hardened. She was ready. She had no choice now but to face the darkness, to push back the force that sought to claim her. She raised her hands toward the relics, channeling every ounce of strength she could muster. "No," Alyssa said, her voice like ice, her will unyielding. "I will not be your weapon. I will not be your pawn." The chamber shook violently as the unseen force responded, the shadows gathering like a storm cloud. The relics reacted to Alyssa's defiance, their power surging out of control. The very fabric of the facility seemed to be unraveling, as if it were being torn apart by the conflict between them. "We will see," the voice boomed, its tone twisted with malicious pleasure. "We will see who is truly in control." And in that moment, Alyssa knew the battle had just escalated to a whole new level. This wasn't just a fight for Earth anymore. It was a fight for her soul. The chamber continued to tremble, the walls cracking under the immense pressure of the unseen force pushing against Alyssa. Her heart pounded in her chest as she felt the power of the relics flowing through her, an ancient energy that threatened to consume her completely. The voice that had filled the room was no longer just a whisper. It was a roar, reverberating through the very bones of the earth, shaking everything in its wake. "Your resistance is futile, Alyssa Kane." The voice boomed again, a low, mocking tone laced with contempt. "You cannot contain me. You were always meant to serve me, to bend to my will." Alyssa clenched her fists, the power within her swirling violently, threatening to break free. Her entire being felt like it was on the verge of shattering under the weight of the force she was struggling to control. The relics flickered and pulsed, their light dimming and flickering like a dying star. "Not like this," Alyssa whispered to herself, her voice strained, the fear she had kept buried rising to the surface. She could feel herself slipping, the darkness tugging at her with every passing second, as if it were trying to pull her under. Her thoughts swirled with confusion and doubt. Could she really fight this thing? Could she really keep Earth safe from the power that wanted to claim her? "Your soul is mine," the voice continued, growing louder, more insistent. "You have always been mine. You just need to accept it." In a desperate effort to fight back, Alyssa slammed her hands down onto the console, sending a surge of power through the room. The relics around her flared with light, the intensity of their energy almost blinding. For a moment, the voice faltered, the oppressive weight in the air lightening just enough for Alyssa to catch her breath. The team stood in stunned silence, watching as Alyssa fought with herself, with the power inside her. Marcus's heart raced as he realized that the real battle wasn't just against the Syrinx or the shadowy figure. It was against Alyssa herself. She was on the brink of becoming the very weapon they had feared, and they had no way of knowing how to save her. "Alyssa, you can't do this alone," Marcus shouted, taking a step forward. "We're with you. We'll fight this thing together. We can't lose you." Lydia, who had been frantically trying to stabilize the consoles, looked up, her voice trembling with urgency. "Marcus is right. We're not going anywhere. You're stronger than this. You can fight it." But Alyssa didn't respond. She was consumed by the power now, her eyes glowing brighter, her body trembling under the immense pressure. It was as if she were both in control and completely helpless at the same time. The relics pulsed violently, the room shaking with each surge of energy. "Please," Alyssa whispered, her voice barely audible over the cacophony of the chamber. "I don't want this. I don't want to be this. But I don't know if I can stop it." For a brief moment, the oppressive darkness seemed to pause, as if listening to her plea. Then the voice responded, softly, almost tenderly. "You cannot resist me, Alyssa. You never could. You were born for this." Suddenly, the shadows that had been swirling around the room coalesced, forming a dark, menacing figure that appeared before Alyssa. It was the same figure that had spoken to them earlier, its mask now more defined, its shape more solid. "You think you can defy me," the figure said, its voice dripping with malice. "You think you can save yourself. You are mine." Alyssa's breath quickened, and for a moment, it seemed as if she might break. The weight of everything, the power, the darkness, the endless fight, pressed down on her all at once. But then she remembered. She remembered her crew, her team, her fight for Earth. They had always stood by her, even when the odds were impossible. She wasn't alone. She couldn't let this thing win. With a guttural cry, Alyssa pushed back with all her might. The power of the Guardians surged through her again, but this time she held onto it with both hands, refusing to let it slip through her fingers. Her body glowed with a fierce, golden light, an aura of energy that pushed the shadows away, if only for a moment. "No," she shouted, her voice like a thunderclap. "I will not be your weapon. I will not be your puppet. I choose Earth. I choose humanity." The figure recoiled, its form flickering, as if it were losing its grip on her. The walls of the chamber shuddered, cracks forming as the power within Alyssa began to reshape the space around them. "You think you've won," the figure hissed, its voice now full of rage. "You cannot escape me. I am the true power of the Guardians." But Alyssa was resolute now. The voice of the darkness no longer held the same power over her. "You are nothing," she said, her voice steady, "and I will destroy you." With one final, overwhelming surge of power, Alyssa reached out toward the dark figure. The relics around her flared to life, their light brighter than ever before, and the shadows screeched as they were torn apart by the force of Alyssa's will. The figure screamed, but its form began to dissolve, unraveling in the face of Alyssa's strength. The darkness was banished from the room, its oppressive weight lifting from her shoulders. The chamber fell silent once more, the energy in the air stilling as if everything had returned to balance. Alyssa stood, breathing heavily, her body glowing faintly with the residual power. Her mind was reeling, but she had won. She had resisted the darkness and kept it from consuming her. The team stood around her, their expressions a mixture of relief and awe. Marcus stepped forward, his voice quiet but filled with respect. "You did it, Alyssa. You've won." But Alyssa didn't respond. Her gaze turned to the relics, the power that still hummed around them. There was no time to celebrate. The true battle had only just begun. The chamber was still, an eerie calm settling over them like a heavy blanket. The dark figure, once an overwhelming force, was gone, its presence reduced to nothing more than whispers on the wind. Alyssa stood, her body trembling with exhaustion, the power of the Guardian still coursing through her veins, but now under her control, at least for the moment. Her heart hammered in her chest, each beat a reminder of how close she had come to losing herself entirely. The team gathered around her, their expressions a mixture of relief and concern. They had watched her battle with the darkness, witnessed her struggle with the force that had almost consumed her, and yet, in the end, she had emerged victorious. But they knew the fight was far from over. "Alyssa," Marcus's voice was soft, but heavy with the weight of everything they had just faced. "Are you all right?" She met his gaze, her eyes still glowing faintly with the residual energy of the relics. The light in them seemed to flicker, a reminder of the power she had wielded, and the darkness she had pushed back. But she nodded, the hint of a smile playing at the corner of her lips. "I'm fine. For now." Lydia, who had been silent until now, stepped forward, her brow furrowed in thought. That wasn't just a shadowy figure. That was something. Someone. Real. It felt ancient, like it's been lurking in the background for eons. This thing has been manipulating everything, including the Cyrex. Alyssa turned to the relics, her gaze fixed on the intricate patterns that lined their surfaces. "It's not just manipulating the Cyrex," she said quietly, her voice tinged with a sense of realization. "It's been guiding them, using their war to weaken Earth, to destabilize everything. And now it's made its move, trying to turn me into its vessel." "But why?" Marcus asked, the question that had been hanging in the air for so long finally spoken aloud. "Why choose you, Alyssa? Why this power?" Alyssa's eyes darkened, the weight of the answer settling heavily on her shoulders. "Because I'm the last one who can wield it. The Guardian's power is meant to protect Earth, but it's been corrupted, twisted over time. Whoever controls it controls the fate of the planet. And this thing wants to use me to bend it to its will." The words hung in the air, heavy with the implications. If the enemy succeeded in fully corrupting Alyssa, Earth wouldn't just fall to the Cyrex. It would fall to something far worse, an ancient evil that could destroy everything. Lydia's voice broke the silence. "Then we need to find out more. We need to learn everything we can about these relics, how they work, what they're connected to, and how we can stop whatever this thing is before it gets any closer to its goal." Alyssa nodded, her expression resolute. "Agreed. But I don't think we have much time. That thing, it's not gone for good. It will be back, and it will keep trying to twist the power to its advantage. We need to be ready." As the team prepared to move, Alyssa's mind raced. The power of the Guardians was now a part of her, a force she could no longer ignore. The darkness she had fought off was still there, lurking in the recesses of her mind, a constant reminder of how fragile her control truly was. And as they made their way out of the chamber, the sound of distant explosions echoed through the hallways. The war outside had only escalated. The Cyrex were regrouping, preparing for their next assault. "We don't have the luxury of time," Marcus said grimly. "We need to get back to the surface and secure our position. The Cyrex aren't the only threat now. We're dealing with something far more dangerous." Alyssa looked at her team, her gaze steady. They had fought side by side for so long, but now, the weight of the battle felt different. The stakes had risen beyond anything they had prepared for. The Guardian's power had the potential to turn the tide in their favor, but only if she could keep control. Only if she could keep the darkness at bay. The storm outside raged, the battle for Earth continuing in full force. But the true storm was within Alyssa herself, a battle for her soul that would determine the fate of everything. If she lost, it would be the end of humanity's last hope. And so, with determination burning in her chest, Alyssa led her team forward, ready to face whatever came next. The storm outside had reached its peak, with thunderous explosions shaking the very foundation of the facility. The Cyrex were relentless, their forces pushing deeper into the heart of Earth's defenses. But inside, the true battle was more insidious, a war not just for the planet, but for Alyssa's very soul. As they moved deeper into the subterranean complex, the team's footsteps echoed in the silence, punctuated only by the distant roar of the battle above. Every corner they turned seemed to tighten the grip of tension that hung over them. Despite their outward resolve, Doubt and fear were becoming insidious passengers, gnawing at the edges of their thoughts. Alyssa's mind was a whirlwind. The power of the Guardians hummed beneath her skin, an almost intoxicating presence. She could feel it pulsing with an unnatural rhythm, as if the relics themselves were beckoning her, urging her to let go, to surrender completely. Every step she took felt like a delicate balancing act, the faintest slip threatening to drag her into the abyss of darkness once more. "Stay with us, Alyssa," Lydia said quietly, glancing at her with a mixture of concern and solidarity. "We're almost there. We'll figure this out." Alyssa forced a tight smile, but the doubt in Lydia's voice was impossible to ignore. The relics had shown her glimpses of the power they could unleash, the devastation that could follow if she were to truly embrace them. But she had also seen the terrifying potential of what lay within the shadows, what was waiting for her to fall. She couldn't afford to give in. Not now. Ahead of her, Marcus scanned the hallway, his hand resting on the edge of his weapon, his eyes darting between the walls and the shadows. "We're close. There's a command center up ahead. It's where we can make our stand." Alyssa nodded, but the knot in her chest tightened. She had hoped for more time, for a way to learn how to control the relics fully before they were forced into battle again. But there was no more time. The Cyrics were already advancing, their overwhelming numbers threatening to swallow everything in their path. And worse, there was something else she couldn't shake, a sense of unease that had settled into her gut, something that went beyond the lingering darkness inside her. It felt like someone was watching them, a presence lurking in the shadows. "I don't like this," Marcus said, breaking the silence. "Something's off." Lydia shifted uncomfortably, her fingers twitching toward her weapon. "It's too quiet. We're walking into a trap." Alyssa's heart raced. She had felt it too, but now the oppressive weight of that sensation intensified. It wasn't just a physical presence, it was a shifting of energies, a disturbance in the very air around them. They were not alone. Suddenly, the silence shattered. From the darkness ahead, a figure emerged, a silhouette that was eerily familiar, a figure that Alyssa had seen only moments before, standing as a dark reflection of everything she had fought against. It was the same shadowy entity, but now it was more solid, more corporeal than ever before. Its eyes, glowing with an ancient, malevolent light, fixed on her with a cold, calculating stare. "You think you've won, Alyssa Kane." The voice was sharp and cruel, a mocking tone that sent a chill through her spine. "You've only delayed the inevitable." The team froze, weapons drawn in an instant, but Alyssa knew they wouldn't be enough. The power before them was unlike anything they had faced. She could feel it in her bones, the same darkness that had tried to consume her before. But now, it wasn't just a specter, it was real. And it was here. The figure stepped forward, its form becoming more defined with each step. Its features were an unsettling mix of humanoid and something far older, something far more primal. Its presence sucked the warmth from the air, replacing it with an ice-cold malevolence that sent shivers down Alyssa's spine. "I have been waiting for this moment," the figure continued, its voice echoing in the chamber, "waiting for you to break, for you to embrace your true power. But you refuse. You always refuse." Alyssa gritted her teeth, fighting back the wave of despair that threatened to drown her. "I will never be yours." The figure laughed, the sound harsh and cruel, as it spread its hands wide. "Oh, but you already are. You just don't know it yet. I have planted the seed within you, Alyssa. It will grow. You cannot escape it." The words hit her like a physical blow. The figure was right. It had been manipulating her all along. The power inside her was a double-edged sword, one that had already begun to corrupt her from the inside out. She had fought it, but how much longer could she hold on? As if sensing her growing uncertainty, the figure lunged, its form shifting impossibly fast. Alyssa barely had time to react before it was upon her, its cold fingers closing around her throat. "Alyssa!" Marcus shouted, rushing forward, but the figure's influence was too strong, its power overwhelming. In that moment, Alyssa felt herself slipping, her control over the Guardian's power faltering as the darkness clawed at her. She could feel the pull of it, like a gravitational force that was slowly sucking her into its abyss. Her body trembled with the strain, but she refused to give in. "I will not become your puppet," she screamed, her voice raw, desperate. With every ounce of strength she could muster, Alyssa forced the relics to respond, channeling their energy in a final act of defiance. Light exploded from her, pushing the figure back, sending shockwaves through the chamber. But as the darkness receded, Alyssa knew this battle was far from over. The figure may have been driven back, but its influence remained. The true fight had only just begun. The chamber fell silent once more, the echoes of Alyssa's defiance ringing in the air like a fading thunderclap. The darkness that had gripped her was momentarily pushed back, but Alyssa knew this victory was fleeting. The shadowy figure, though forced to retreat, had made its presence felt in ways that no one could ignore. The battle was far from over. In fact, it had just become far more personal. Alyssa's chest heaved, her breath coming in ragged gasps as the remnants of the powerful surge she had unleashed still crackled around her. Her skin buzzed with the energy of the Guardians, both a gift and a curse. She could feel the power pressing at the edges of her mind, trying to reclaim what she had just cast off. "Are you all right?" Marcus asked, his voice cutting through the tension. He stood close, his eyes scanning the shadows around them, but his attention never strayed far from Alyssa. His concern was palpable, and yet he could see the resolve in her eyes. She was not about to give up. Alyssa wiped the sweat from her brow, nodding stiffly. "For now, but I don't know how long I can keep this up." Lydia, who had remained unusually quiet, finally spoke. Her voice was low but resolute. "We need to act now. We know what's at stake. The Cyrics and whatever that thing is, it's all part of the same plot. We need to end this before it's too late." Alyssa turned to face her team, her jaw set with determination. They had been through so much together, and now, the greatest challenge of all was ahead. She could feel the weight of their expectations on her shoulders, but she would carry that burden. Earth's survival depended on it. "I agree," Alyssa said. "But we can't do this the way we've always fought. The Cyrics aren't the only enemy anymore. That thing, whatever it is, has more influence than we realized. We'll need to strike at the heart of it all." Marcus nodded, his eyes narrowing with understanding. "The command center. It's the key. If we can take it out, we'll cripple both the Cyrics and whatever this thing is trying to do." They moved swiftly through the complex, their steps quickening as they neared their destination. Every corner they turned, every shadow that flickered at the edge of their vision, felt like a trap waiting to spring. Yet they pressed forward, knowing that they were now more than just a team. They were the last line of defense for a world teetering on the edge of oblivion. Finally, they'd reached the command center, its massive doors standing before them like the threshold to a final confrontation. Alyssa's heart raced as she stepped forward, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This was it, the end of the road. "Stay sharp," she ordered, her voice firm but tinged with the gravity of what lay ahead. "We take this one step at a time. We have no room for mistakes." With a deep breath, she pushed open the doors, revealing the vast control room inside. The flickering lights illuminated rows of consoles, but they weren't alone. At the center of the room stood the figure, the dark entity that had been manipulating everything from the shadows. It turned slowly, its glowing eyes locking onto Alyssa as it gave a sinister smile. "You're too late," the figure said, its voice dripping with cold amusement. "This world will fall, and with it, you. I've already won." Alyssa's eyes narrowed. The time for words was over. Not today. With a single decisive motion, she raised her hand. The relics pulsed in response, the power within her surging once more. The room seemed to tremble as the energy built up, growing until it felt like a storm contained within her. The figure hissed, its form flickering and shifting, as if trying to escape the power now gathering around Alyssa. But it was too late. With a fierce cry, Alyssa unleashed the energy, sending a blast of radiant light crashing into the figure. The force was so intense that it caused the very walls of the command center to crack and crumble. The dark entity screamed, its form unraveling under the onslaught. It tried to fight back, but the energy that had once been its weapon was now turned against it. For a moment, the figure was still. The room held its breath. Then, with one final deafening roar, the entity collapsed into nothingness, its form dissipating like smoke in the wind. The oppressive darkness that had weighed so heavily on Alyssa, on them all, was finally gone. Alyssa stood, panting, her body trembling from the exertion. But in that moment, she knew it was over. The war for Earth wasn't won yet. The Cyrex still remained, but the true enemy had been defeated. The team gathered around her, their expressions a mix of awe and relief. "We did it," Lydia whispered, her voice barely audible. Marcus placed a hand on Alyssa's shoulder, his smile a rare and precious thing. "No, you did it. We all did." Alyssa looked at her team, her friends, the people she had fought for and with. She had faced the darkness within herself and had emerged stronger. Together, they would continue the fight, because even with the victory in this chamber, the war was far from over. But with the darkness gone, there was now hope. And for the first time in a long time, Alyssa allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could win. The battle for Earth had entered its final stage, and Alyssa Kane, Earth's eternal defender, was ready for whatever came next.